senior full-stack web developer here. That means basically I look after Deppy.com, and unsurprisingly, Deppy.com is on Wordpress.
Whoa.
Yes! Woo! So, I work here on behalf of Deppy once again. Thank you all for coming, and it's great to be able to give back to the tech community. Obviously, there's lots of PHP developers and other technologists here, and yeah, hopefully you find this talk useful, and you find this meetup useful, and it's great to be able to host you guys. So I just want to get a gauge of the room. Who here works with PHP? Okay, now, leave your hand up if you actually like PHP. Yeah, excellent, good. Okay, who here loves PHP? All right, has anybody gone so far as to get a PHP tattoo on them? Okay, I'm glad. I'm slightly glad.
Do we have to show it?
No, you don't. But that is fine. All right, so you like PHP, right? Which means that you're not just a hack. You're not just here because you're developing. Yeah, you're here because you're a modern PHP developer. You want to get good at PHP, right? Like that's what you want to think about. Dependency injection. You want to think about containers. You want to think about good coding practice. And so you probably care about PHP done the right way, yeah? And you care about, and you know who Rasmus Lerdoff is, yeah? He's a guy who wrote PHP. Do you know who Jordi Borgiano is?
Yep.
If you don't, you've definitely used some things he's written, right? He's the guy who wrote Composer. He's the guy who wrote Model. It's like the package management system, the logging thing on PHP, yeah? Jordi Borgiano, sell that on the internet. So you're a modern PHP developer. The first thing you do when you start a PHP project, compose a init, probably, yeah. You know about namespacing, you know about auto-loading, you know why PS4 is better than PSR0, maybe. And if you had your way, really, because you're a modern PHP developer, you would use Laravel for everything, yeah? Because it's beautiful and it's amazing and
ooh, spicy! You are eroding that reputation you built so far.
The work with WordPress and everything is an improvement on WordPress. But honestly, PHP Artisan Tinker, that thing changed the way I code, right? Because before I came across Tinker, I never had like a PHP command line REPL, what does it stand for? Whatever that is, REPL. Right, so anyway, you, like me, you're a modern PHP developer, yeah? Yeah. You are the very model of a modern PHP developer. So now, as developers, we like solving problems, yeah? And what I'd like to do for you today is solve a problem that I had to solve for myself a long time ago. It's an existential crisis because you're a modern PHP developer, but there's an elephant in the room.
Oh.
Nah.
Nice.
Okay, actually, there's two PHP developers. Yeah, I'm not shooting deep guys. Let's see him over here. So in fact, there's actually two PHP.
Segue.
There you
There
go.
are two elephants in the room. One is PHP. You're the modern PHP developer. The other is the 500-ton elephant in the room, which is WordPress. Yeah. And WordPress is, I believe, it's just hit its 16th birthday as of last week, which means that PHP is now old enough to learn to drive legally and is old enough to drink illegally. And therefore, so you're not PHP developers. Who here has to work with legacy code? Anyone has to work with legacy code? Whose legacy code is 5 years old? Whose legacy code is 10 years old?
5, 1 and 5.
More than 5, more than 10?
Yeah.
More than 15?
I just opened up the IS.
Yeah. Basically, everyone who's got their hands up still works with WordPress because it's 16 years old, and so it's the very opposite of being a modern PHP developer because you're working with some really, really, really old code. And inevitably, people know you're a PHP developer. Somebody comes along and they say, okay, we need you to do something with WordPress. Your rich Uncle Craig comes up to you and says, look, I've got this thing on WordPress and it's not working for me. Can you please help me? Somebody installed some plugins and something's breaking and I don't know what's going on. Or your boss comes up to you and goes, the website's down. You know PHP, right? I know it's not your problem. It's not your first job, but we need you to fix the website. Please, pretty please. Somewhere along the way, as a PHP developer, you're going to have to work with WordPress, yeah? And so, although you might be tempted to Marie Kondo the problem away.
Does it spark joy?
Does WordPress spark joy for anybody? It probably doesn't. So you'd be really tempted to throw it away. But the fact is, for your personal website, yeah, you can do that. On the commercial website, you can't, right? You know, I know, commercial realities are, you're dealing with business, they're going to go, you want to spend 6 months rewriting this in Laravel or in your framework of choice, or you can use WordPress off the shelf. It's already there, it's working. Right, so the reality is at some point you're going to have to work with WordPress. So the question is, right, so that's the problem. My solution is, well, at least if you're going to work with WordPress, how are we going to take some sort of joy out of it? How are we going to sort of throw some modern PHP at it so that at the end of the day, you're not trying to slit your wrists and quitting and going to become a monk in the Himalayas. So before we get there, let's remind you about the behemoth that is the 500-ton elephant that is WordPress. Right, so WordPress, yes, it still runs a bunch of these websites. Basically, every major news outlet in Australia, smh.com.au, news.com.au, a whole bunch of the miners as well, they all use WordPress. If you recognise the names on the side, Business Side of Gizmodo Kotaku, Lifehacker, that's where I used to work. They all use WordPress. All these websites use WordPress. And obviously, Deputy uses WordPress. Woo! More stats. WordPress runs 33% approximately of the whole internet. There are approximately 76.5 million WordPress.com blogs. And WordPress owns 50 to 60% of the global CMS market. So that's like, at the end of the day, if you ever get fired from your job, you can probably get a job as a PHP developer somewhere, right? But you're not going to get fired from your job because you're a good developer and you're a modern PHP developer and you're good. What else? Why else WordPress? Well, I come from a media and publishing background, and in some points, WordPress is actually cutting edge. Who here has heard of Gutenberg? Do you know what it is? So it's an update. So WordPress recently, when it went from version 4 to version 5, updated its editor. And the editor is doing something actually. So WordPress has always had a WYSIWYG editor. What it now has is a WYSIWYG editor that works in blocks. And this is the thing, right? So this is there was a thick piece by the New York Times labs, so the devs at New York Times, talking about what's the future of publishing, where's it going, what are we doing here? And the fact is that basically since time immemorial, if you wrote an article, you had a pretty monolithic bit of software, right? A bit of data. You had, you might have had a title, you might have the author, but then you have a big body of text. And it might be 50 words, it might be 1,000 words, it might be 3,000 words. That's what it is, right? It's just one big block of content. So this New York Times Labs article was really proposing a thing that we actually should want to move from articles to particles. Because the 21st century, publishing isn't monolithic anymore. You actually have a whole lot of content in your article. And so for instance, here's my little example article. This is actually from my website. I write about board games as a side thing. But in this here, you've got a whole lot of different bits of metadata, right? You've got the title, which is actually going to appear at the top of your web page. You've got the image. You've got an intro paragraph, that's just text. And then you've got like a little tweet embedded here. You might, I don't know if you can tell, but that's the tweet plugging this meetup. Right, so actually, there's a lot of different bits of data going on. And if you're going to take this from a desktop to a mobile, well, that image has got to change. But now publishing is all about nomadic, homeless content. So once upon a time, if someone's going to read an article on your website, they went to your website, yeah? Where do you go now to read a news article? Apple News, Google News, something like that. You might go to Facebook Instant Articles. So your content no longer lives on your website, it lives on other people's websites. And when you send it to other people's websites, you've actually got to deal with the fact that, well, they're going to handle tweaks differently, right? Or they're going to have to scale the images differently, right? For a mobile device, you need a different size image to run on desktop. You might need a nice glossy image for desktop. That's a nice, beautiful landscape 16 by 9 thing. When you're on mobile, you don't want a landscape, otherwise you're going to miss all the detail. You don't just want to scale. So you're going to do things differently. If you're working with Apple News, there's actually like a tweet element. Anyway, so this is all saying that WordPress actually, with this Gutenberg thing, is actually cutting edge media. This is where the media industry and the publishing industry is going. And so with Gutenberg, it's actually cutting edge for the editors, for the end users. That's great. Problem is, you and me, we're not always the end users. Most of the time, we're actually the developers. And why not WordPress? Well, there's still a lot of problems with WordPress. You might already know this. I'm just going to quickly run through them. Right. So WordPress just hit its 16th birthday. I did that code. Sorry. And you can tell there's legacy stuff in there that's just difficult to read, difficult to deal with, difficult to understand. Here is a function that gets the title. Really, it's doing like 3 significant things, but the fact is it's 50 lines of code because they have to add all these comments in the middle. All these comments in the middle are because WordPress, if you're familiar, uses these hooks and callbacks interface actions and filters. And that just means that at this point here, and at this point here, you can basically do it. You can pull a plugin, and that plugin can do absolutely anything you want to your code. And that just makes, if you're using somebody else's plugin, that makes it super dangerous, right? Because you don't know what they're going to do with that. They don't know if they're going to use that to inject something to the database. Even if you know how to control it, you're trying to trace through code, and you can't once you get to a place where you're calling a callback or possibly 10 callbacks, trying to track through what 10 different plugins are doing and why something's coming out wrong, that's a lot of pain. Right. And also, this is a template. This is actually something that prints out, that iterates through, say you're on a news site, and it's iterating through all the posts and printing out post by post by post by post. And all I really want to draw your attention to is the fact that there's just a lot of global functions and who's calling what and where is a post actually defined and how do you get the current post ID, and you can't. Like, this is straight out of one of the stock WordPress themes. So this is complicated, difficult to deal with. It's frustrating, right? So WordPress sucks. I hope I've convinced you of that if you didn't already believe it. So what do we do with that? So what I'm going to do is, in the time that I have, I'm going to run through some tools. I'm going to give you some ideas. Here's some things that I personally have used to deal with WordPress. Here's some things that have made my life easier, that have brought me a bit more joy, that have made me feel a bit more like a modern PHP developer. Not everything's going to work for you in your current situation. So rather than sort of getting one tool and going really deep, what I'm going to do is go broad, and I'm going to just name drop a whole bunch of different stuff. And hopefully, if you ever have to work with WordPress, you'll find at least 1 or 2 things here that are useful. All right. So apologies if it doesn't hit precisely what you're after. I'm just going to sort of name drop and go through. Yeah. Also, my caveat, I come from a media publishing background, and so I'm thinking about publishing articles. I know that other people use WordPress, well, people use WordPress for all sorts of things. I have no experience using WordPress for e-commerce, so I'm not even going to tell you how it works with WooCommerce, or if or not you should. I can't give you any advice on that for whatsoever. Also, I'm going to pitch at a commercial level, so I'm going to assume that you're a developer actually working on a commercial site and your business, and yeah. Okay. Right. So where do we start? Well, cool. Actually, let me go back a bit. There we go. All right. Cool. So where do we start? Let's start with the dev environment. I might well be telling you stuff you already know. Apologies. So you can start with something like Vagrant and VirtualBox. If you guys know what Vagrant is? Yeah? Okay, cool. Right, so you can obviously DIY it yourself. You can get the latest Ubuntu thing. apt-get PHP, apt-get Apache, and go for it. Alternatively, if you're just deving for yourself, do you guys know about Scotchbox? Scotchbox is sort of like a Swiss Army knife where they just give you basically every tool you might possibly need on a Vagrant box, and that's super useful when you just want something that's going to work, and it's got MySQL and Postgres, and it's got Apache and Nginx, and probably Python and Ruby and a bunch of other stuff. Every tool you need is probably going to be there, but you can still, it's still Vagrant, so you can keep it isolated from your box. If you're a hardcore WordPress developer, you might be interested in PHP Distillery. That's a tool where they preload a bunch of WordPress-specific stuff on there, latest WP CLI, and that comes highly recommended. It's really good if you're just doing WordPress. Of course, in the world, we've all moved away from Vagrant already, and we're now into containerized stuff and Dockers and Kubernetes. Yeah. If you really want to Dockerize WordPress, you can. There is, in fact, an official WordPress Docker image. Just Google it, you'll find it. And that'll get you the most recent WordPress to work with. Also, if you prefer Docker Compose, just to give you a couple more tools, there is 10up has a good WordPress Docker dev environment, and the Docker Compose file will give you MySQL and some caching. I can't remember what. Oh, Elasticsearch, Nginx, and mkHD. Stuff you might possibly use. So that's just there. All right. So where we want to get into it is Composer. You know about Composer, right? Okay. So WordPress is a problem when it comes to Composer because you've got this big slide of code. Actually, let me. No, let me bypass that. But you get a big slab of code where everything is woven in. So in your code base, you've got your plugins, you've got your themes, you've got a WP config file thrown in there somewhere, and it's all just a big mess of stuff. A whole lot of stuff just thrown together. And so how do you modernize this? How do you deal with it? How do you use Composer? And let me get there. So there's a couple of steps. You can just go and get you can git clone WordPress/WordPress. But if you really want to go Composer, the first start is John P. Block. He reorganized a bunch of stuff and made it work with Composer. You just do Composer require John P. Block, and I think about 6 files is all you need in your repo, and you've got a working WordPress thing you can use as a framework and start to develop off. But my personal favorite, and I'm just going to plug this because I really like it, is Bedrock. And Bedrock is a bit more opinionated, rearranged a few more stuff. Don't worry, I'll show you in a second. And I think it's a good solution if you want to look for something like WordPress. So if you want to do WordPress with Composer. So once again, you can do, what I'm about to show you is going to work with John P. Block's WordPress remix, I guess. And you could do this on your own, but I'm going to use Bedrock just to demo how a bunch of these things work. Cool. All right, hopefully this works and my demo doesn't crash, otherwise I'll be crying. Alrighty, cool. What's going on here? Right. So this should be cached and should be quick. I go on, I hope. Otherwise, yeah, cool. Right, so let me throw you what just popped up, which is Bedrock over here. Actually, no, I've already prepared this slide. What am I doing? All right. Yeah, I prepared. On the left, this is a stock standard WordPress build. On the right-hand side, you've got Bedrock. And you can see that things have already been rearranged and rearranged usefully. And let me bring you through this. So first, you've got Composer. Composer is kind of core, because you've got Composer, you can now do things like namespacing and auto-loading. Yeah. So namespacing is as easy as going in and here's something I prepared earlier. Right. And then suddenly, even though the rest of WordPress doesn't really support namespacing yet, your plugin that you've written that's actually doing your functionality has namespacing, and that's good because you don't have to deal with all the global functions that pollute WordPress anymore, right? So you got namespacing, you got auto-loading. What's also useful is that this app and WP separation. So all the WP core, that's sitting in WP. And then all your application code, the stuff that you're actually going to change, the stuff you're going to edit, the stuff that you're going to modify, that's all sitting in apps, right? So you install a couple of plugins, that's going to sit there, you've customized it. But at the end of the day, you're never tempted to go into WP and change core code because you shouldn't change core code. Next time the big WordPress release rolls around, you're just doing a Composer update. That'll pull the new WordPress core into WP, but it's not going to override anything in app, right? So you can rest assured that you're making changes, and you can always have the most recent version of the core code, but it's not going to mess up, override, change the stuff that you're doing. What else? So you can see there's a .m file there. So instead of having a WP config file on the left, which is just hidden in and amongst all the other code, you've got a .m file. So you're much less tempted to throw that into version control. You're much less likely to accidentally commit secrets to a public repository, and that would be a bad thing, right? So we used to keep an end file secret. Most of the time when you actually do, in a whole lot of standard Git ignores, you have a .env file there, so you're not going to commit that thing. What else can we do? All right. Let me throw a couple of other things up. My channel will just get on the screen. Sorry, this is a lot faster than I was running through earlier. But when you actually have stuff that you really, really want and we really need, it's just a matter of doing Composer require, and your things are going to come through. Now, the other useful thing, I don't know if you saw this, in the WP JSON file, in the Composer file, there is a repositories thing sitting here. You guys familiar with this? Do you know how repositories work in Composer? Right, so you'll be aware that in Composer, let's get a browser somewhere. Right, so in Composer, quite often you can go to packages, right? So you're going to find your thing that you need. I don't know. Let's say php.end, because we're just talking about it. You find your thing, Composer required, that's all you need. Well, there is a similar thing for WordPress, believe it or not. WordPress packages. And that means anything that you might need or want, you can just do a Composer require. And this is all synced off the live WordPress repos. I think they sync it every hour. So it's pretty up to date. Does anybody, so who here uses WordPress commercially? What's your, in the green, what's your favorite, have you got a theme that you like or a plugin that you like?
Yeah, Timber.
Timber?
Timber, yeah.
Like that?
Yep.
Cool. Is it theme, right?
It's, yeah, kind of.
Kinda?
There's a library you can use to be able to leverage Twodium on the rest of it with
Oh, yeah.
WordPress templates.
Oh yeah, cool. So this one down here, probably.
Probably.
All right. Here we go. Live coding. Where's my? Right. There's a CLI just installed in case you're wondering. There you go. And then. All right, that didn't work. Super library. Let's try that. Whoops. I can code. Don't worry about me. Does anybody have a favorite theme that they really, really like? One you've used recently that might be vaguely interesting?
Imagine probably most folks doing it commercially have created their own custom themes.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. What was one I came across recently? I think it was Night. Right. Whoops. I can spell. In the meantime, let's get Bedrock up and going. So at the moment, it doesn't work, but that's because we haven't done our .info. Right, Bedrock root. Don't worry, you won't see my secret password. This is just on. I'm using Scotchbox that I mentioned earlier to run this all off. So this was going to happen as soon as I did the lab down.
That's fine. They will figure it out.
No, I was sort of caught at what I was about to do.
That's all right.
Yeah.
When it comes to the video, don't worry. We shall
Thank you.
condense it for viewers.
We will definitely be able to figure it out.
Yeah.
We're going to room full of engineers. We can sort this out. We got this.
Yeah. It's not going live tonight, right? So.
It's not going live tonight. That is fine.
That's it.
All right. Anyway, let's work with the code, and you can all see this later. All right. So what we're doing is we've just uploaded a bunch of stuff. Right. So because earlier I installed WordPress CLI. Yeah. Right. Don't worry, I have a backup plan. It is fine. Okay, that one should work. All right, cool. Here we are. We're back. Don't worry, that is not my real password for anything. Please don't try to hack me.
Yeah, we will have to wrap it up.
Sure. All right. Cool. All right. Alrighty. I haven't given hurry up, so let's talk through some more stuff. Right. So why is Bedrock really useful? Why is all this stuff really good? First of all, right. So we're now installing plugins and themes, and we're doing it by the command line interface. What does that mean? That means your end users aren't going around clicking around through the interface and installing plugins that way. Rather, you're able to install it via command line, and that means you can install it via a script, right? And that means when you provision, when you're deploying, you can actually control exactly what version of WordPress and what dependencies all go up onto production, or onto your dev site or onto your staging site. What that means is you're in control of updates. So the user, previously you'd have to log into WordPress and click on the Update WordPress button if you want to update your core or update your plugins. Instead, what you're doing is you get to control it. You get to do the Composer updates. Using Composer, you can control the version IDs. You can control what versions and things you get. You can avoid incompatibilities. You can make sure that they don't upgrade past WordPress 4.9 because at the moment your users aren't ready for Gutenberg, and that's not something you've trained them and prepared them to do, right? So you can control your versioning with Composer. You can do all that, and you can control it. And it means that, once again, it's repeatable because you can script it all. A couple of other things we saw. I think we talked about word packages already. Right, so we talked about packages. You can use that to now get all the WordPress plugins you actually need. And once again, that's useful. You can script it all. It is good. Yeah, we demoed that a bit. I was going to run through plugins worth installing. Here's a really good one, by the way. If you need two-factor, throw that on. There's a lot of rubbish two-factor plugins out there. It took me a long time to find this one, and this was actually the best, so I'd use that. Right, so what have we actually done using all that sort of stuff? We talked about, you don't have to use Bedrock, but that's just how I've done it to give you Composer, give you WordPress CLI. And well, what we've done is we separated the application code from the framework code, right? You have WordPress sitting separately, and then you're running your code in your version control, and you've got them separate. You separated your third-party code, so all your plugins, things you're getting from somewhere else, and you separated that from your own personal code. Something I didn't get a chance to show you, but you can, if you want, because of the way that Composer works, and you can add private repositories, you can point them at your own GitHub repo. That means you can actually check out your own personal separate plugins. What that means is you can now separate concerns as well. So you can have a couple of your devs working on the plugin, getting that functionality up, and you're just pulling that in with Composer. Sorry I didn't get a chance to demo that. I've got code samples. I'll throw it up on the web at some point afterwards. Cool. Another thing I didn't get a chance to show you, but there comes a point at which you kind of go, WordPress is kind of cool, but you just don't want it dealing with your front end anymore. You want to plug it into something like Laravel. And so if you want to do that, there's actually a thing called Cell. It's been used in production, and basically what it does is give you eloquent models that plug straight into your WordPress database, right? So you can get posts and do posts all and get all your every single post that you've got on the WP posts table. And that means you can actually, and this is what we actually use at another place, is have your editors use the WordPress backend admin, write all that stuff, and then it goes onto the database. From your front end, from your actual front end, a public-facing website, you're writing it in Laravel, you've got Cell, plugging it straight into the database at the back, and you can have access straight to your WordPress data without any of the craft of WordPress and having to do with plugins and all the other miscellaneous. And I've got like a proof of concept where I've written like 20 lines of code, and I've got like WordPress data just coming out. So that'd be that easy to write your own blog, coming out of something like Laravel. Right. We have no time for that, I imagine. 30-second summary. Here's a whole bunch of things I mentioned. Some I didn't get a chance to actually mention, but if you actually want to write them down, or you want to talk about them at some point, there's a whole bunch of stuff there. Take a photo if you need to. I think these will go up online at some point anyway.
Yeah.
Cool. And hopefully if you use some of these things, yeah, you're stuck with the elephant that is WordPress. It is still a pain sometimes to deal with, but if you can modernize some of the stack, then you can find satisfaction with the bits that you get to control. You can find satisfaction in being able to go composer update and just get a new version of WordPress and not have to deal with users when that happens. You can just go in and code your own front end if you really want to. And all of that means that you can leverage some sort of control back onto WordPress and do some more modern things. Not all the modern things you want to do, but more than you could before. And hopefully, I don't know what your circumstances are, but hopefully some of that was useful to you. Cool. Thank you very much for letting me speak to you.